1989 and 1992, 7 young travellers aged between 19 and 22 vanished along the highways stretching from Sydney to Melbourne. Among them were 3 Germans, 2 Britons and 2 Australians. Some journeyed in pairs, others alone, all drawn by the promise of open roads and adventure. They were last seen hitchhiking. Each was intercepted, taken deep into the isolation of the Belanglo State Forest, where the landscape turned from sanctuary to grave. They were young, they were travelling, magnesium for jet lag and melatonin for sleep. A backpack, a journal, a ride, and then nothing. This is Belanglo, Rituals of the Lost, Episode 1, The Forest Watchers. On the 33rd anniversary of the first discovery, we remember their stories and condemn his. Saturday, September 19th, 1992. The discovery. 2 orienteering runners enter Belanglo State Forest just after midday. They're training. They know the trail south of Sydney. But something's wrong. A depression in the soil. A glimpse of fabric. Hair. They stop. They don't touch. And then they run. They call police. The forest has spoken. Police response. Police arrive. They mark the area. Photograph everything. The clearing is cordoned off. The ground is disturbed. Not by weather, but by intent. They find Caroline Clark, 21, British, recently graduated. Her body is upright, her head tilted, her eyes closed. Caroline had been shot 10 times in the head. The bullet grouping suggested target practice. The second body. The next day, September 20th, police return. 30 metres from Caroline's grave, they find her friend Joanne. Joanne Walters, 22, Welsh. Her body is face down, her spine punctured, her hands bound. She had been stabbed 15 times, 4 in the chest, 1 in the neck, and 9 in the back. The spinal injuries would have caused paralysis. She had been gagged and buried in a shallow grave. They had both been gagged, bound, and buried beneath pine needles. The women weren't buried randomly. They were placed. The proximity of the graves and the ritualistic nature of the violence signalled a pattern. It was the forest's first whisper, and it cracked open a silence that had been held for years. Who they were. Joanne Leslie Walters was born on January 26, 1970, in Maesteg, South Wales. She was the eldest of 4 children, her upbringing stable, working class, and rooted in the community. She trained as a nanny. She was responsible, reliable. Her choice of profession reflected a practical nature and a strong sense of duty. Caroline Clark was born in 1971 in Northumberland, England. She had recently completed university. Intelligent, gentle, quietly confident. Her trip to Australia was part of a working holiday, an opportunity to travel before beginning her career. The women met in Sydney, became friends, travelled together. They were cautious. They didn't hitchhike alone. They kept to routines. On April 18th, 1992, they were last seen in King's Cross, preparing to head south. Objects left behind. Police found scattered items: a magnesium tablet, a lace sock, a Walkman. None of it random. These were choices, arrangements, a pattern. The forest was no longer neutral. It had become a crime scene, a place of ritual, a place of silence broken. Public reaction. News of the bodies spread quickly. 2 young foreign backpackers found murdered in a remote forest. Media coverage intensified and speculation grew. Backpackers changed plans. Hitchhiking declined. Belanglo became a name people whispered, and not for good. Parents warned their children. Locals stopped going in alone. The forest had been recreational. Now it was forensic. The brutality was too close, too deliberate. Someone had killed these girls, and they would kill again. Forensic expansion. Police widened the search area. Soil samples were taken. Vegetation patterns studied. Forensic teams looked for drag marks, disturbed leaf litter and tool impressions. Ballistic experts analysed the bullet wounds. The grouping was tight, the angle consistent. It suggested control, repetition, practice. Profilers began building a psychological sketch. A lone offender, familiar with terrain, possibly military background. The violence was rehearsed. Media and myth. The press leaned in. Headlines shifted from tragedy to pattern. Backpacker murders became a national fixation. Belanglo was no longer just a forest. It was a symbol, a warning, a place where silence had teeth. Journalists interviewed locals. Some had seen strange vehicles. Others remember hearing gunshots. But no one had gone deep enough until now. Institutional response. New South Wales Police formed Task Force Air. Up to 1,000 officers were involved in the search and investigation. They coordinated with British authorities, reconstructed timelines, cross-referenced hostile logs, interviewed dozens of backpackers who had passed through Sydney in early 1992. The emotional toll was mounting. Officers described the forest as oppressive. The silence wasn't natural, it was curated. Emotional reflection. Families were notified. Joanne's parents in South Wales, Caroline's in Northumberland. Their daughters had been missing for 5 months. Now they'd been found. Statements were released. Grief was quiet, controlled. The contrast between their lives and their deaths was stark. They had come to Australia for adventure. They found violence, and the forest had held them in silence. Joanne Walters and Caroline Clark were not reckless. They were careful, capable, and responsible. Their story begins with independence and ends in Belanglo. Next time, we look closer at the man, the method, the silence. In episode 2, the Milat method,